I was working with the government, talking with the government, taking the government to the people. I was in the security committee of the government. I was in the peace and reconciliation committee of the government. I was in the roadmap committee of the government. And the government was flying us from Port Harcourt to Abuja. We're having a meeting with Mr. President. And then the government's army would beat me blue, black, and attempt to kill me.
That was a clip from the film Sweet Crude. With me is the documentary's director, Sandy Coiffi. In addition to some great content, there's some great music in this film.
Julie Wolfe,
yeah.
Composer, yeah.
Now, as I mentioned before the break, you and your crew were kidnapped at one point, held for about a week, right?
We were actually detained.
Detained,
and
okay.
the difference, of course, is that we were held by the Nigerian government.
The government, right.
So we were detained,
so
arrested and detained. We were in a boat in a part of the Delta we had permission to be in. We were there legally, but the JTF, which means Joint Task Force, which is sort of basically the Nigerian army in the Niger Delta, they picked us up because they knew we were on our way to do an interview, and they don't want journalists there. Mm-hmm. What Chris Ekior in the clip you just saw is referring to, he's a youth activist, and what's significant about that and how it relates is that we were there in a period of time that there was supposed to be the beginnings of an amnesty program and peace talks. And part of why it's so critical that stories get out of the Delta is that without a spotlight on what's happening, there's really very little chance that anyone will be held accountable for anything other than another sort of side room deal being cut. And that's what Chris is referring to, and that's why we were going where we were going to film. We were in an area of the Delta where there had been some deals cut, and we were going to hear what the people had to say about those conditions. So they picked us up, and then the equivalent of the CIA in Nigeria, which is called the SSS, held us in military prison for a week and interrogated us and took our tapes.
Now, Nigeria, as we mentioned earlier, and you gave a little bit of the history, it's a complicated place. It's one of the hardest places to work as a journalist. So, kudos to you guys for even attempting to go there and do the filming, because I know a lot of journalists don't even bother considering going to Nigeria because of the challenges. There's a lot of corruption on a lot of different levels. On the government level, there's organized crime. It does seem like from the outside there is, how do you get rid of this problem in the Niger Delta, given that there is this endemic corruption in the country?
Well, I think, for starters, because you have to. To me, one of the most telling things is that the parties that have the vested interest in the continuation of, and remember now that we're talking about 120 million people live in Nigeria.
Right.
It is one of the most, even if you're not a humanitarian, it's one of the most strategically important countries in the world.
President Bush even offered to send troops in to help to pacify.
Yeah. And the U.S. Pentagon has a new effort called AFRICOM to secure the Gulf of Guinea off the coast of Nigeria. And while the world is paying some attention to offshore drilling because of the U.S. issue right now with BP's platform, most people don't know that the majority of offshore drilling in the world is in the Gulf of Guinea. So, and that's Nigeria. So to go back to what you said, when I hear people say it's intractable, and sure, what your film points out is true, but you can't fix it, it's just too corrupt, I realize those parties are always the same parties that will win if chaos reigns. And if we don't sort out how you have actual democratic forces that can regulate oil companies and governments in a meaningful way, if we don't sort that out in Nigeria, how are we going to sort that out anywhere else? Right. Seems to me that Nigeria is a good place to start because it represents all of the most dastardly aspects of what happens in the alchemy between guns and blood and oil, which we've unfortunately known well for the last 60 years around the world. When I hear Americans say we have to get off foreign oil, and I look at efforts in places like Canada for things like tar sands to make sure that you stay off foreign oil, I realize, oh, sure, you think that's a good answer? Go ahead and look at what ringing the planet Earth for oil will do for you in your backyard. You know, it's sort of the, like a demonic portrait of Dorian Gray, that we're going to let these people halfway around the world pay the consequences of what we've been doing. But those consequences are not as far away as you think.
Right.
So we have to solve it. And the international community, by and large, the players in both formal and informal diplomatic circles, they know how to meaningfully impact the Niger Delta. It would require, however, that you don't have record profit on the part of oil industries at levels the likes of which we've never seen.
Right.
You're talking about companies that have larger income than most countries.
Right.
So yes, we can do something about it.
Well, it's interesting that your film came out, Sweet Crude, around the same time that another documentary by a similar name, Crude, by Joe Berlinger, who I understand you went to
I went to college with. Yes.
His film looks at a sort of a similar issue of Texaco, now
In Ecuador.
Chevron in Ecuador. And both of you have made wonderful films that have gotten critical attention, but also have gotten attention for doing the film. You for being detained by the government, and Joe because of federal. The Chevron has actually sued the producers of his film for access to 600 hours of footage that they and a federal judge in the U.S. actually wants to hand this over, claiming that documentary is not really journalism, that there's sort of a distinction between this, that you guys are, I mean, he didn't mention you, I don't think specifically, but you guys are activists out there, not really protected by the shield laws of journalism. I'm curious what you think about what's happened with that ruling.
Well, I think, first of all, I think it was really foolish on the part of Chevron to sue for that footage because it's going to give that case a ton more attention. So, to be honest, I'm happy for Joe because
it's been great attention for sure.
It's great attention and it's important attention. And now journalists will cover Ecuador. So first of all, if journalists were doing their job better, there'd be a lot fewer documentaries being made. I mean, that's the truth. I think independent documentaries are today doing what Edward R. Murrow did 50 years ago. There's a reason why there are so many of them being made, because there really just is not the kind of broadcast attention and time for those stories. And we get to do something more in depth. We have an hour and a half. So that's an important role that we play. I think it's absurd that a judge would say that we're activists. I mean, if you take a camera anywhere and you give one person 2 minutes of their point of view, you can be seen as having been an activist. I mean, I learned early on, I was in Northern Ireland in 1998, and I was there with a camera, and I learned that if you were even going to safely sleep somewhere in Northern Ireland, it didn't matter if you were a CNN journalist. I mean, Christiane Amanpour was there as well. I had to figure out if I was going to sleep somewhere protected, so that makes you an activist, I suppose.
Right, well, we're out of time, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Good luck with the film. You can find out more about Sweet Crude by visiting their website, sweetcrudemovie.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts after this short break.